of May 20th, 2014 started. So we will have a call of the regular council meeting at 6:32. Okay. Tonight we're blessed by having the Lowell Girl Scout Troop 5197, led by Peggy Hunter, here with us tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance. So we're going to stand in a moment, and Jeanette Laster is going to lead us in the invocation. You'll remain standing, then they're going to come in here and present the flags and lead us in the pledge. Please remain standing until they take the flags away. Okay, thank you.
Bow with me, please. Precious Lord, Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight. We're humbled in your presence, and we ask your blessing upon this meeting. We ask that you grant wisdom to all of those making decisions tonight, that you grant clarity of speech to all of those who are going to be speaking. We ask for your love and your peace to prevail in all that we do, and that your will be accomplished. We ask all of these things in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, take the flags away, please.
Good job.
That is Troop 5197, led by Peggy Hunter. Peggy, can you kind of wave at us there, the leader? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we sure appreciate you bringing the Girl Scouts and leading us in the pledge tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you for what you do in the community.
Thank you.
That brings us to the roll call.
Kendall Stuckey,
Here.
Thomas Evers,
Here.
Connor Jones,
Here.
Eric Shine, Jeanette Lassiter,
Here.
Keith Williams,
Here.
Dean Bittner,
Here.
Ronnie Breland.
Here.
Mayor, we have quorum.
Thank you. That brings us to our consent agenda items. If take a few moments and reflect on those and give any comment, question that you'd like to direct either to the mayor or to Jerry Hudlow.
I just noted that it appears that the general fund receipts are exceeded by the expenses.
You have a question or just that it's
No, I'm
exceeded?
just commenting
Yeah,
on
right.
that I noted that we're exceeding our expenses.
That's pretty
exceeding our
common in the
receipts.
first few months of the general budget when there are so many expenses from equipment and different contracts that are due in the first 3 to 4 months of the city. Jerry might be able to give you a better explanation than that, but that's generally the case early in the year.
We've also, of course, in January, you have heavy expenditures on insurance and things of that nature that you won't have the rest of the year. I've also front-loaded any transfers that we have going to other funds this year, like going to the utilities fund. If you look at your transfers, like I say, I've kind of front-loaded all that stuff. So it's going to look a little rougher in the first 6 months. Second 6 months is always, or generally speaking, is a better 6 months.
Always rosier.
Always rosier, yes, sir.
We are, Jerry, we're ahead on our ambulance service payments and everything to the city of Springdale as well, right?
Yes, sir.
We don't have that, doesn't come due for months yet.
It doesn't
so
come due till September now.
We're
Yes,
well
sir.
ahead, so.
Yeah, like I say, I like to kind of front-load stuff in the first part of the year when I can. Our cash position is better than it was last year, so
I noticed our sales tax is looking stellar once again.
sales taxes are fabulous, you bet.
Yep.
I wouldn't be too concerned right now.
Address any question about the contract Springdale. Dana, we just signed the check and we're up to date through June.
Yeah, that was my point. We're paid ahead. Mhm.
If no further discussion or questions, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Dean Bittner, and a second by Kendall Stuckey. We'll do a voice vote on this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. That brings us to a time of public forum. If there's anyone here that would like to address the city council, we have a sign-up sheet at the back that the city clerk is on her way to retrieve. Mike's shaking his head no, but if you'd like to get your name on that sheet and address city council, this would be your opportunity to do so on any non-agenda related item. Okay. Give Liz a chance to get back here. We'd probably open that.
6:40.
Yeah, 6:40, okay. Tonight, that brings us to a presentation, and we have Kevin Falk with us with Stevens, and he has been here before and shared some of the different aspects of what we can bond, how much we can bond. I know we had some discussion during the last budget session, the 2013 budget session, that some of these needs that are around the corner, such as possibly the fire station and things related to the Kathleen Johnson Memorial property, other needs that we may have, we might want to consider at some time combining into a bond initiative. And so, Stephen, it's good to have you back again, Kevin, and we want you just to enlighten us where we're at right now with rates and about what we would be looking at and the process of all that. And we have that loaded up. I believe Patrick's got all loaded up for you to use the monitors tonight. Sure. Good to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate you all allowing me to be here. And as the Mayor mentioned, we've talked about this, Mr. Hudlow and the Mayor and I, several months ago, and just so happens that tonight was a night that would actually work, that I could be here, and y'all had an agenda that could accommodate me being here, so I appreciate it. And what I've looked at is just kind of a really preliminary analysis of using sales tax to fund some of your potential capital improvement projects. And so that's what's on the screen here in the chambers. And then I also put a hard copy in front of you all so it might be a little easier to see. So with that, let me flip on over to the first page just to give you some context of your sales tax collection history. And as Mr. Bittner mentioned just a few minutes ago, as you can see, your sales tax is up considerably over the last year. Just for reference, your 2013 calendar year was $1,597,364, or about almost 27% increase over your calendar year last year. What I'm showing you in this slide here is your last 12 months, so rolling 12 months, $1,617,340. So you're even up this year as well, so I know you're probably aware of that. If you flip on over to the next page, and please, if you have questions, and I'm going to try to run through this so that I don't take up too much of your time, but if you have questions, please stop me. What the mayor asked me to look at is 3 different scenarios. You'll see there 1/8 cent, 1/4 cent, and 3/8 cent sales tax. In Arkansas, sales taxes to fund capital improvement projects can be approved by your voters in 1/8 cent increments, so that thereby that's what you see there. As you'll notice, and I think this is probably what you really want to focus on, your 1/8 cent sales tax would provide funds for just a little bit over $2.5 million to pay for any projects you might have. That provides a coverage of 2.0, and by coverage what I mean is if you have $100,000 in revenues, $100,000 in debt service and $200,000 in revenues, that's 2 times coverage. So that's what that number represents in that third column all the way down. And I looked at a 20-year maturity. You possibly could go out 25 years. You want to be careful, depending on what your projects are, not extending the bonds out further than the useful life of that project. So what I assumed in this scenario was 20 years. I also assumed on that final column a projected payoff, and by that what I mean is any excess revenues not necessary for debt service can be any excess funds not necessary for debt service can be used to pay off the debt early. Now, you're not required to do that, and I'm not, and Mayor, as I was explaining to Mr. Hudlow earlier, I think when we originally talked, you thought maybe that 1/8 cent might be just used for operation and maintenance, but to enhance our coverage, as I mentioned earlier, which would help your interest rate. So, again, you'll see that 20-year payoff on a 1/8 cent is going to pay off in 2023. The next one there, 1/4 cent, would provide about $5.1 million in project funds for any capital projects you might have. Again, a 20-year maturity, and then a 2026 projected payoff. And then finally, 3/8 cent sales tax would provide funding of $7.7 million roughly. And then that bond issue would pay off in around 2028. And my analysis is assuming our current collections, that 12-month collection figure that we just looked at. So if any of that changes, then this analysis changes. And I'm also assuming current interest rates, so assuming we have rising rates in the near future, and I think that's inevitable, then this analysis would need to be updated. So, and just for your reference, we're talking about a TIC, or true interest cost, of about 3.93%.
Would you repeat that, Kevin?
3.93%. You know, we've had a little bit of improvement in the bond market probably since I've actually done this analysis about a week ago. So it's probably slightly better if we were in the market today than that. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. And just so you all know, too, bonds are sold on a date certain. And the interest rate is locked in on that particular day. So they're going to fluctuate, bond rates are going to fluctuate just like a mortgage rate would, okay? So keep that in mind. Any questions?
What is a short-term outlook on bond rates in the next 6 months, Kevin? I know we can't hold you to anything.
Yeah, I mean...
Do you think they're likely to go up or down?
I think they're likely to go up. We've had, like I said, just in the last couple of weeks, improvement in the bond market. You know, conventional wisdom would have said at the start of January that we were going to see a rising interest rate throughout the year. And in fact, we saw that for a good part of the first of this year, and then we've kind of come back down a little bit. As you'll notice, as the stock market kind of struggles on some days, that generally helps bond rates. We've had a little bit of that here in the last, week or so. So that's my best guess, Mayor. Please don't hold me to that.
Yeah.
But, as
It helps us with our planning,
Sure.
just to kind of know where it might be.
Sure.
Because we are entering the budget sessions
Right.
of our 2015
Right.
budget. So that's all coming up, and of course, that's why we wanted you
Sure.
here to share this information.
And I don't know if you all follow any of this, but as you hear a lot about the Fed raising rates or lowering rates, you know, any action they take typically has some effect on bond rates. The last 6 months or so, as the Fed has eased that tapering that you've probably heard about in the news, that has kind of artificially kept rates low. As they scale that back, that should drive up rates, and it has a little bit. But again, we've had kind of an anomaly here in the last month or so. We've had rates kind of come back down a little bit. So again, if I could guess that right, Mayor, I probably wouldn't be working. But
Okay. Understandable.
But typically, we should see rates probably rise here in the next several years, I would think. Okay.
Thank you.
Kevin, what's the penalty for satisfying the debt early?
No penalty at all. That payoff, all you're doing when you pay off early, just like if you paid off a mortgage early, you're saving interest costs. So no penalty per se from that perspective. Now there would be a call date associated with this bond issue. Typically something like this would probably have a 5-year call, meaning you couldn't pay it off before 5 years.
Yes, sir.
But after that, no penalty at all. Okay. And typically, bondholders want to have some sort of at least lock that their bonds are going to be outstanding for at least a certain amount of time. 5 years, typically. 10 is another pretty typical call date. So I would think on something like this, we would probably do a 5-year call.
And of course, on a 20-year note, the first 5 years is where the majority of your interest is going to be paid anyway.
Yeah, typically. But as you pay this debt off, if you use these excess proceeds to pay off debt, you're paying off the longer maturities first, meaning the ones further out. Now they have the highest interest rate. So.
Now, Kevin, all this goes before the voters.
Correct.
So it's up to the voters whether or not they want to pass this thing or not.
Correct. And on any type, and the mayor mentioned maybe several projects you're considering. The voters would have to vote on numerous questions depending on what projects you wanted to fund bond proceeds with.
But I mean, as far as a bond, they would have to vote to pass it or not.
Correct. Vote to pass the tax, and then you'd vote for each individual project. So the tax has to pass, and then for instance, if you're going to vote on a fire station, that has to pass. If you threw street projects in there, that has to pass. They don't all have to pass to issue the debt, but at least the tax has to pass and one of the projects. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because, the way I think is, and I'm sure a lot of citizens think, we're taxed to death right now. I mean, sure, we got projects we want to do, especially like fire station and everything.
Sure.
But, and some streets, but the tax, people all around the country are taxed to death. Mm-hmm. They need projects done, but they're taxed to death.
Sure.
And bonds are good.
Kevin, I see you have some other scenarios that lay out the different eighth.
Yes, sir.
Tenth
Yeah, those are just
divisions. Is there anything that you'd like to call our attention to?
Not necessarily. I just included those debt service schedules for each of those 3 scenarios, just so you could see those. And you can see the associated coupon rate with those. And then I might just kind of fast forward to that preliminary schedule of events. I thought I'd include this just so that you had an idea of how long this might take if you wanted to do this. Initially, the council would have to approve an election ordinance, and that would set out, just as we were talking about, projects and amounts and that sort of thing. Your bond attorney, which has typically been Ryan Bowman with the Friday Law Firm, would draft that and then forward to your city attorney for review. You'd have to submit the election ordinance to the county clerk at least 60 days prior to the election, and if you waited until November, for instance, of this year, then you'd have to do that 70 days in advance. So you kind of have to be thinking a little bit ahead here if you want to move forward. And then I'm allowing 6 weeks or so for the informational meetings to be conducted with your citizens. And then week 6 there, you have to publish your notice of election 10 days prior to the election. And then week 8, you would have your election. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, I'm looking at about week 18 would be the closing and then transfer of the monies to the city to be used for your projects. Now, that schedule could be tightened up a little bit, particularly after the election, but I was trying to show you probably worst-case scenario of how long it's going to take.
So typically, within 20 weeks, assuming that the voters approved it, the money is available
Right, absolutely. Yes,
for
sir.
expenditure.
How would you get it out to the citizens?
I'm not
How
sure.
would you get this out to the citizens, to the
Oh, just,
taxes?
you mean as far as informational?
Right.
Well, you can't, one thing to keep in mind, you can't expend city funds to promote the
Right.
campaign. Some cities will put together little groups that will have some small fundraisings, just so they can send out the promotional material. Now, there's nothing that precludes the city from putting out facts about the issue, but you can't promote it, and you can't expend city funds to promote it. So typically, your Rotaries, your Lions clubs, those sort of things, oftentimes the top elected official, the mayor, would speak at those sort of things just to give the citizens an idea of what the tax is for and how it's going to be spent and all the specifics. And we certainly can help, prepare anything that might be necessary in that endeavor. But typically, you just try to have as many meetings as you can so that your citizens at least understand what they're voting on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to make a comment?
Well, I always like to remind city officials in these situations, Kevin, that a sales tax is something that is collected at point of sale. So if you have a store where people from outside the city come and shop,
That's right.
you are collecting sales tax from that person. And so when we go to, let's say, the Walmart in Rogers, we're paying sales tax to the city of Rogers.
That's right.
And so when people come from outside of town, whether it be the east or neighboring cities, they're paying sales tax into our coffers. And of course, they're using our streets and our city services, but that's something to keep in mind, is that you're not just raising money from your own citizens, you're also raising money from folks outside of town.
That's exactly right. And Mayor, if I could make one point, just so I'm clear, or at least the council's clear. Now, this tax would, when the bonds are retired, then the tax falls away. So if you chose to use your surplus tax proceeds to pay off the debt early, as soon as those bonds are paid off, then the collection of the tax ceases.
Want you to proceed. Let the record reflect that Eric Shine just showed up for the
654.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Kevin? One of the things that I'd like to follow up with Tom's comment is that, yes, not only do other surrounding cities utilize our streets and our services, we are responsible for them while they're within our city limits. From an EMS standpoint, from a fire department standpoint, if their car catches on fire, all of those things. So the fact that we are surrounded by other municipalities is something that we at least need to give some thought to. So I want to make that point. Any other questions concerning this presentation?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to remind the council, if you look on page 49,
Page 49.
the city and town, you can look and see the sales taxes for the neighboring city, the sales tax option for the county and for the cities. And that just kind of compares where we're at with other communities. If you guys want to take a look at that later on.
The other thing, and I appreciate so much spending time on this for us, Kevin. I really do. I'm very thankful to Stevens and to yourself for doing this, because we are beginning our budget planning for 2015. There are a lot of capital improvements that we're discovering out to the west side of our city, and some things that we need to be prepared for. And let me ask you one more question before you sit down. If the city were to put it out to voters for a bond, and if it were approved, hypothetical, how common is it that cities work in at that point into their budget process with the thought of paying that bond off in 5 years, even though they have the option of carrying it to 20 years?
Mayor, I'd say pretty uncommon.
Uncommon?
Mm-hmm.
Why would it be uncommon? I'm
Well,
just curious.
typically, not being privy to those discussions, mind you, but my first initial reaction is they've got a dedicated revenue source for that. So probably, they've asked the voters to approve that, and the voters understand what they're voting on. And if it passes, then there's an understanding that it's going to be there to pay that debt, and that's what it's going to be used for. So.
What percentage, and I'm not asking to be accurate, just
Sure.
approximately, what percentage of municipal bonds do you hold that compared to those that are fulfilled to their term versus being paid off early? Is that a 75-25 split?
Yeah, probably so. I'd say typically with sales taxes too, they're going to be paid off earlier than a lot of other types of bond issues, like a water and sewer revenue, for instance, just because cities will elect to use that excess to pay off outstanding bonds more quickly.
Of course, the council will make those decisions in the future, but
Sure.
as a mayor, I'm concerned as keeping our debt reduced as much as possible.
Right.
And would like to find alternate ways than using you, but that's why we've got you here, is because we realize that some of these needs may press us before we have enough sales tax increase and other measures to supply them.
Sure.
And of course, you've worked well with the city in the past. And again, I just want to appreciate your hard work into this document.
Sure.
Thank you for the meetings that you and I and Jerry have had.
Sure,
And I
absolutely.
thank you for the email correspondence. And I'm sure as we go through this 2015 budget process, the council will begin to make a decision whether we want to put this out there to the voters or not.
And if I might add one more thing, and I don't mean to prolong the discussion, but as you're kind of mentioning paying things off early, in my analysis is assuming everything's staying the same. So if you continue to have the growth in your sales tax like you've been seeing at least the last 12 months, then obviously they're going to pay off that much quicker.
What's attracting me is the rates right now.
Yeah,
So
and they
have our attention.
They are attractive at the moment, that's for sure.
Mayor, if I could ask a quick question, and you, Kevin, you may have addressed this, but once the bond has been fulfilled, we've paid it off, what happens to the sales tax increase?
Tax drops off.
It drops
So
off.
it ceases as soon as the debt's paid off, whether you elect to use, use surplus revenues to pay off early, or if you just, again, you have the option that can be structured so that, typically it would go out to maturity. So, the longest it would stay out would be 20 years. If you elected to use, say, that 1/8 cent excess to pay off debt early, then, my scenarios of them paying off at 2023, 2026, and whatever the other one was.
It automatically drops off, so it wouldn't be a vote by the council to try to renew it.
Well, I mean, you would have that option if you wanted to, but you would have to have your voters approve that. I mean, if you wanted to go to the voters and, you would probably know at least 6 months in advance that the debt's going to be retired at some date certain. You could plan to go back to your voters and say, Mr. Voter, we did what we said we were going to do with the funds, and they're paying off early. You could go back and have the same scenario where you have additional projects now, and you could ask the voters to reapprove that tax and do some different projects or additional projects.
I guess I have a question about this whole bond thing, I guess for the mayor. In the discussions you've had with the finance director and Kevin, are we talking about like consolidating a lot of things we already have in addition to the capital improvements we're wanting to do to get it to like a one lump type payment a month? Or is this something just to facilitate new projects only?
It would be combining those things that we deem necessary to move forward that are not being currently provided for by the 2% or the 1% sales tax extension that we
And it
put
would
to the
be,
voters a while back. Excuse me?
it would be to also take some of the current debts and refinance them in. He's saying no.
Well, let's, Jerry, I forget if we discussed that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we
And that's a different security. That's secured by franchise fees, so you couldn't roll that into this debt.
Has to be separated.
Right.
Kevin, if I may ask you something, you said it's a fluctuating interest rate. Did I understand that right?
Yeah, bond rates are going to fluctuate on a daily basis. And again, my analysis is fairly current as far as the rates go. But if, say you issued this debt in 6 months and whatever date the offering took place, and the bonds would be sold on a date certain. And on that day, after the sale, we would lock in the rates on that day.
So if it's 8%, it'd be 8%.
That's right.
If it's 10%, it'd be 10%.
That's right. I don't think we're going to see those kind of rates, but you never know.
No, but I'm just using that as an
Absolutely.
analogy.
You're exactly right. Yeah, whatever it is on that particular day, and assuming that the city is comfortable with that, we would lock in rates. We would commit to underwrite in my world after consultation with the mayor, and that would be your rate that particular day.
So that'd be a fixed rate.
Kevin, knowing
sir.
that every city is different, every election's different, do you and your group typically find more success with an election at general or with a special election?
Typically specials.
So that's a decision we need to make in consultation, of course, with you and
Sure.
and the way the mayor feels. Thank you.
And I have never just sat down and said this one passed, this one failed. But in my mind, special elections have a better chance of success, simply because if you can get your supporters out to vote for it, oftentimes they'll pass, because you're always going to have those folks that are going to vote against the tax, whether that's a general election or a special. But most likely, I think and it depends on the project you're voting on too. I'm working with the city of Elkins, and they're going to vote on a parks project here soon. Well, they have some pretty energized folks that are going to get out and vote for that. So now there's always going to be those that won't, but I think typically they have a better chance to succeed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, thank you very much.
Okay.
I knew that you might need to leave.
I'm going to
so-
scoot out. I've got another meeting in Van Buren to
I knew
head
you
to, so
did.
thank you all.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Kevin.
That brings us to our ordinances and resolutions tonight. We have one item of old business and one item of new business. And so, first item on the agenda tonight under old business is an ordinance rescinding ordinance number 204 and ordinance number 858 and ordinance number 869 to amend the City of Lowell Code of Ordinances, Section 24, Article 2, Park Rules, Section 24-19, and declaring an emergency. We have further discussion about this. We had a considerable amount of discussion last meeting, but we'll entertain a little bit of discussion here before we put it on the second reading tonight. So, does anybody like to comment or ask anything?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I've got a thing here I'd like to comment on. First comment I've got is it cannot go on an emergency clause, for one thing,
Because
because an emergency clause states that it has to be for the best of the welfare, and you have to name each thing on the welfare of it. Let me find it. And
I believe tonight, all we have before us, Ron, is putting this on the second reading. We will not be moving forward with a third reading, as
Right.
far as I understand
It says
tonight,
the-
with an emergency clause. So
It's-
we're not to that point
Understand
yet.
that. But it's got an emergency clause on it, which states that the emergency clause is best entered for the welfare,
Ronnie, so emergency clauses do have to have a sort of a statement of what the emergency is, and the courts in Arkansas have told us they won't second guess the city council, but they do want to know what the council's thinking. So we write down in there, what we think. So what one person might think is an emergency isn't necessarily what the courts are looking for. They're just looking for us to say that we feel like there is one, therefore it should go into effect. Remember, all emergency clause does is put something into effect immediately instead of in 30 days.
it says for public peace, health, and safety.
Right, and those are the terms that sort of most folks have settled on, because as the Arkansas Supreme Court has said that those terms are legitimate. So
It says you may state the facts of the emergency clause,
right, we need to say something about the facts. I think the fact in this one is
and it's,
for the protection of public property, and that's going to probably be enough for the
well,
courts.
what about the peace and the public safety? I mean, they get out there on the road, that's not safety.
Well, that is what, and that's why, that's a good point, Ronnie, and that's why
And that's
you have an opportunity to vote on emergency clause separately. So if you disagree with those reasons, you could vote for the ordinance, and you could not vote for the emergency clause, and that requires a second independent vote. And so if you really felt like, hey, I don't think this thing needs to go into effect immediately,
And that's
you would
according-
simply vote against that
Yeah,
emergency
and that's
clause.
according to the Arkansas Constitution, Statute 5, subsection 1.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ronnie, for
I'd just
calling
like to
attention to
say that
Go ahead, Jeanette.
I had intended to bring that up at the next reading, but I agree with Mr. Breland in that I don't see how the sale of alcohol in the park can be necessary for the preservation of public peace, health, comfort, welfare, and safety of the citizens. There's just ain't no way, no how.
Okay,
Mr.
duly
Mayor,
noted.
I've got a few other comments. I've talked to a lot of people since the last meeting, and some of them are well-respected, and they have actually told me, and I've had phone calls and everything, that they have said that they will no longer attend Mudtown Days if this thing passes. And you know them, they've lived here just about all their lives. And they're elderly people. I've talked to younger people, and they will not attend it.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comment? And then we'll have one more, and then we're going to go ahead and bring this to a motion. Okay. I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rule and place the ordinance on second reading by title only.
So moved.
We have a motion by Dean Bittner. Do we have a second?
And just for clarification, suspending the rule is to read it in its entirety. We're reading title only. That's what
Correct.
we're suspending. Okay.
Still be only on the second reading.
Second.
Connor? We'll do a roll call vote on this.
Eric Shine,
Yes.
Kendall Stuckey,
Yes.
Dean Bittner,
Yes.
Keith Williams,
Yes.
Jeanette Lassiter,
Present.
Ronnie Breland,
No.
Thomas Evers,
No.
Connor Jones,
Yes.
All right.
we have 5.
So you realize, Mr. Evers, what you've done is all you've done with your vote is made it so that we have to read it out loud, the entire thing.
I was being good and quiet this time.
But you understand, that's all we're doing.
I enjoy your voice. It's such a soothing voice.
You're getting
And you have a
getting
chance.
good at that speed
You have a
reading.
chance to ask for a reconsideration, because anyone who voted no can ask for a reconsideration. You understand that? And if you want to do that, this would be the opportunity to do that right now. And it wouldn't speed it wouldn't speed anything up. It would just keep you from having to hear me dribble all through this thing.
So we've taken the time to tell me that, so what you're saying is if I were to vote present, then you wouldn't have to read?
No, you have to vote yes. It requires 6 votes, 2/3 vote.
Then I'll stand with my vote.
All right. If I may, Mayor, an ordinance to rescind ordinance number 204, and ordinance number 858, ordinance number 869, and to amend the City of Lowell Code of Ordinances, Section 24, Article 2, Park Rules, Section 24-19, and declaring an emergency. Whereas it's come to the attention of the City Council, the City of Lowell, Arkansas, that the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Arkansas should be amended to clarify the use of city parks. Now, therefore, be it ordained, the City Council, City of Lowell, Benton County, Arkansas, that ordinance number 204, ordinance number 858, and ordinance number 869 are hereby rescinded in the Lowell Code of Ordinances, Section 24, Article 2, Park Rules, Section 24-19 should be rescinded in the following park regulations hereby adopted City of Lowell Code of Ordinances. Section 1, City Park Regulations. City parks are open for the public use from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. No motorized vehicles shall be permitted within the boundaries of city parks at any time except in parking areas. C, professional firearms and weapons are prohibited unless permission is granted by the mayor or his designee. D, alcoholic beverages are prohibited except during official City of Lowell festivals and events, during which time vendors shall be permitted to sell beverages, and such beverages may be consumed within the park. Such distribution and consumption shall be in accordance with applicable state law, regulations, and Lowell ordinances. Any vendor wishing to sell alcoholic beverages shall, during an event, shall, prior to selling, obtain written permission from the mayor of Lowell. Smoking is not allowed within park buildings. Defacement, destruction, removal, and disturbance of property, equipment, and natural features is prohibited. Causing damage to signs, shelters, and other structures is prohibited. It's unlawful to litter, dump trash in the park. Overnight camping is prohibited without express written permission of the mayor or his designee. Fishing, catch and release activities are allowed unless otherwise noted. All state laws apply. Solicitations and sales are prohibited without express written permission of the mayor or his designee. Disorderly conduct is prohibited. Pets must be restrained and on a leash. No pets are allowed in buildings. Owners must clean up after their pets. Fires restrict to proper containers, limited areas. No ground fires permitted without written permission of the mayor or his designee. All reservations are subject to fees, fines. Any person found guilty of violating provision of this ordinance will be subject to a fine not less than $25 nor more than $300 for each violation. Section 3, the ordinance number 204, ordinance number 858, ordinance number 869 are hereby rescinded, and all other ordinances or parts of ordinance conflict herewith are hereby repealed to the extent of the conflict, and if any portion of this ordinance shall be found invalid or illegal for any reason, the remaining portions of this ordinance shall remain in full effect. The emergency clause reads, whereas it's necessary for the protection of public property in Lowell, Arkansas, it is necessary for the preservation of public health, comfort, welfare, and safety of citizens and property of Lowell. Therefore, an emergency is declared to exist, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from the date approved, passed, and approved this date.
Thank you. Yes,
Well
Tom?
done.
Thank you, Tom.
I think you're getting better at that.
I know Mr. Evers loves to hear it.
Okay. There's no further action we need to take.
No, sir,
Ready?
it has been read for some
Okay.
time.
That brings us to new business. It's a resolution. Jim and the street department, Public Works has brought my attention to some maintenance equipment that is either not being used, worn out, needs to be discarded to allow room, and you have a list here before you of that type of equipment related to parks and streets. None of these items individually would be, in my opinion, worth more than $20,000. Probably not collectively over $20,000. But as you know, I need your permission to go ahead and to dispose of these items through the method of an auction. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve the resolution as written.
Motion by Keith.
Second.
Was that second by Dean first?
Yes,
or
sir.
Someone down?
Connor was first.
Connor? Sorry about that, Dean.
That's okay.
Put that gun back in the holster there.
You want to read this whole thing too?
Well, there's some pretty interesting things here for sale, or for auction, but, of course, the entire public is invited to this. It will be, publicized in the paper, and you can have a previewing, of these things if you'll go through, my assistant Melanie Houston, if you'd like to see these items. Of course, we're interested in, them bringing as good a price as possible. Okay? So that brings us to the roll call.
Connor Jones,
Yes.
Thomas Evers,
Yes.
Ronnie Breland,
Yes.
Jeanette Lassiter,
Yes.
Keith Williams.
Yes.
Dean Bittner.
Yes.
Kendall Stuckey,
Yes.
Eric Shine.
Yes.
Motion to approve the resolution as presented is approved. The number will be Resolution 14-16. Resolution 14-16.
Thank you. That brings us to our committee reports, and first on the list is Keith Williams with Finance Committee. So,
We did not meet.
that's a pretty short report then.
We did not
Do we
meet.
need to meet?
If you feel like we need to, we can.
Not at this point, I do not.
I mean, it may come up after 2 or 3 more items, but
Okay. And we have the Ordinance Committee led by Dean Bittner.
Mayor, we did not meet either. However, we will be meeting sometime between now and next council session. I'm going to bring a resolution forward asking the city to support presumptive legislation for firefighter cancers, and I'll bring the language with me to the next meeting. It's non-binding. It's simply encouraging the Arkansas Municipal League to do the right thing and recognize certain types of cancer among firefighters as presumptive as a result of the job. Certainly the evidence is overwhelming in support of that. And Fayetteville passed a similar resolution here a couple of weeks ago. And at the June meeting, I'll ask the council to pass the same resolution.
Okay. Thank you. Under announcements,
Mr. Mayor,
yes, ma'am.
I believe that we have need of going into executive session
Second.
Okay.
to discuss a personnel issue. I knew you would
Okay.
ask.
I'll let the record reflect we went to executive session at 7:18.
All right.
Rest of you, it's break time.
Yeah. Coffee, water?
man the station, make sure everything's taken care of.
I'm in command.
Alexander Head.
City Council meeting back in the session at 7:43, ending the executive session portion of the
It
meeting.
won't take you 5 minutes to mow that little yard.
That brings us back to announce,
Decision? Anything needs to
there was
be
no
added?
decision made.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
couple of announcements. Is this appropriate? Okay. You know, I've prided myself on never missing a council meeting, and I wanted to go my entire tenure without it. But coming up in July, I'll be in Baltimore, Maryland, at the time of our council meeting, attending some fire service classes, including fire station design, construction, and maintenance, et cetera. So I would ask to be excused from the July meeting. I'll be here for June, of course, but with that, I'm sorry that I won't get to maintain the perfect record. On the other side, this Thursday, the 22nd, at 6:30 in the evening at the Springdale Country Club, we will be recognizing firefighter Bud Planchin from the city of Springdale, who passed away with cancer some 5 weeks or so ago. Bud is one of those folks who contracted one of those 3 certain types of cancer that are most prevalent in firefighters, and we'll be awarding his widow the Line of Duty Death Medallion at that ceremony. You're all welcome to attend. There'll be a number of dignitaries there, political and otherwise, if you can call politicians dignitaries. But the media will be there, and everyone is invited. I know the mayor plans to attend, and so it'd be a good opportunity to see a little bit about what's going on in that world. That's 6:30, Thursday the 22nd, at the Springdale Country Club. That's all I have.
Mr.
Mayor.
Mayor?
Oh, go ahead, Jeanette.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I have
ma'am.
an announcement.
Go ahead, Jeanette.
It's just in the way of a reminder that Mudtown Day is coming up next weekend on the 31st, Saturday, starting at 6:30 a.m. till 9 a.m. at the Firehouse will be the Kiwanis Club annual pancake breakfast. If you're not aware of it, the Kiwanis Club helps out needy children in our community. In other words, any money that we get stays in Lowell. And our tickets this year are $5. It's all you can eat pancakes, biscuits and gravy, sausage, orange juice, milk, and coffee. And children 13 and under are $3, and children 3 and under are free. And I have tickets. May
Those are for free
31st.
pancake breakfasts?
Jeanette's a very good salesman. I bought my tickets from her, and I'm actually a Kiwanis myself. And then I gave the tickets away, so.
Keith is a Kiwanian also, and he needs to buy tickets from me.
I could have bought them from myself.
I have more tickets.
I know, you do.
6:30 to 9.
See me after
Okay.
6:30?
a.m.
I'm more of a 10:30 to 12:30 pancake kind of guy.
Brunch guy.
Mayor.
Okay,
Mayor,
moving right along.
Mayor,
Yes,
when I went down in April, down there in Little Rock for that government 101 class, it was very informative. I only needed a couple hours, but I stayed the whole 5 hours, and it was very informative. So I'm going to say, if you get a chance to go to any class for that Arkansas Municipal League, you need to go. You will find them classes very informative.
thank you for the testimonial, Ronnie.
Go.
Let me see, being sure we don't skip anything.
Sean?
Help us get the word out too, that Mudtown Days, we're having Back Road Anthem. They're on Saturday night with another band, and they're popular enough in the area, I understand, that they're actually going to be one of the attractions to the AMP later on. So we're really blessed to have them here for Mudtown Days. Patrick, thank you for getting that up there. There are plenty of these to spread around the community. We've already begun to get a lot of them out. Melanie and Karen and others in City Hall and myself are going to be taking one afternoon and trying to get them out a little further from the city, get the word out there who's going to be there. Mudtown, we're hopeful this year is going to be a huge success. We're trying a lot of different things.
Not rainy.
Yeah, I hope it's not, pray that we don't have rain. That's one thing we don't want an abundance of on the 30th or the 31st, but we're excited about it, and I want to thank everybody that's been working so hard on it, particularly Karen, you and Melanie particularly.
You still need volunteers?
We still need volunteers.
Okay.
Do you know when our volunteer meeting is at? What date have we got established for that? Haven't said it, but it should be coming along in the email anytime. Okay.
By like June 2nd.
Matt's got an announcement tonight too. Matt, why don't you come to the podium there and tell us your announcement? So.
Well, I just wanted to introduce our new code enforcement person. It's Debbie Jones. If you'll stand up.
Welcome.
She's a
Harassing
real
all of you.
firecracker, too. She's got Matt in line
She'll be
already.
making sure Tom Weeds eats the ditch out in front of his house.
It's clean right now, that's all I can tell you.
So,
Good to have you here, Debbie. Welcome. She's quiet as a mouse. Her office is next to mine, and I hardly know she's there. Okay. Another thing that you may have seen recently, that we had the Medal of Honor recipients at the Walmart headquarters a few days ago, and there were 13 of the 77 recipients of that award there. I went and represented the city. There was 3 or 4 mayors present there. I would say a crowd of about 500 people, but that was so. At one point, I said, "Boy, how can I work that in?" And then later, I was thankful that I went because they were such a unique group of men that have done feats of valor through World War II, Afghanistan, Vietnam, and so many different conflicts that they were honored for. And then to see that many of those men together was quite a moving experience, and see them interact with one another in the public. Some amazing stories we heard in an hour and a half, 2 hours. I stayed late and got each of their autographs with their picture card. I was able to get all 13. Liz doesn't know this yet, but I'd like to give those to the museum with their autographs on them, because that opportunity doesn't come around very often. So
glad to
I will
accept
get you those cards, okay? What else have we got? We did have one of the Justice of the Peace that stopped by earlier in the meeting. He sat over here. His name was Brent Myers. He failed to get on the agenda, but he is out and about making county residents aware that they're talking about imposing a millage at the November elections for all county residents for ambulance service in rural areas of the county. As you know, this has been an ongoing issue for probably nearly a year now, and it was brought to a vote at least once, maybe twice, can't recall. But if you have friends and relatives in the county, try to help get the word out that's one of the things being considered. What else have we got tonight?
Well, I'd like
Any
to
other
hear
announcements?
Sean's update about the sewer extension project. for Dixon
Okay,
Lake.
I'm gonna
What?
have,
Could you come to the podium, please? My hearing is going kind of.
You will be waiting till June
For an update or for
Yes,
the
sir.
completed project?
for update.
For an update, not until
We hope to
June?
be able to go to bid in July.
Okay.
That's where we're at now. We just got a few more numbers to get put together.
See, that wasn't so hard, was it?
No, but it's not much information. It's not what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to tell you I'd be coming in June asking to enter into
There was like
contract.
7 restaurants wanting to go in July, as soon as that sewer line gets in there. You got that worked out?
Can you tell us who they are?
I'd like it to be, like Cheesecake Factory and the Chart House and stuff like that. Who?
Jack in the Box.
I like Jack in the Box tacos. They're a little mystery, but Who? Yeah.
I also want to recognize Kendall Stuckey, Jeanette Laster, and Frank Masivnik. They showed up for the
And Liz Estes.
groundbreaking. Liz Estes, that's true. And my assistant, Melanie Houston, Karen Davis. Patrick was there with the camera. Gosh, who else was in here that was that meeting? Then we had several police and city park. Jerry Hudlow was there. We had a really unique opportunity to announce our section of the trailway as not the missing link, but the final link. So that's under contract with ARCO at this point. I think I announced this last meeting, but construction's going to begin any day now on that.
What's
Be
the
completed
projected
in
completion?
180 days, so
180 days is what they're
180
doing?
days.
Yeah, the first day was kind of rainy.
Yeah, but very appreciative everybody took part in that ceremony. Anything else? Going once,
Mayor,
going twice.
don't forget citywide yard sale, June 6th and 7th, isn't that right?
Yeah, and what is it, projected, the 20th or something like that, if it rains?
Excuse me?
Projected dates for rain out on 6th and 7th is like the 20th or something like that? 20th and 21st, that's what I was thinking.
20th and 21st, okay.
And also municipal league convention coming up right around the corner.
18th, 19th, and 20th.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Is that it?
Mr. Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
A motion we adjourned by Jeanette, a second by Ronnie Breland. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like
Get your
sign.
tickets, get your red
So,
tickets.
this meeting will be adjourned at
You got something for a credit card swap?
Thank you, Mayor.